Welcome back to the Mental Perk podcast, where we focus on real people, real issues, and real talk. I'm Carla Hutcherson, a licensed professional counselor and the director for the Hannah for Hope Foundation.
And I'm Brandy Mock, executive board member for the Hannah for Hope Foundation.
We are here to talk about all things mental health, whether it's daily stress, academic pressure, work and career issues, managing a diagnosis, or suicidal and self-harm behaviors. We want this to be a space of honest talk that helps to destigmatize perceptions surrounding mental health issues. Today, we want to introduce our guest speaker, Josh Vazquez, a licensed professional counselor. And Josh is a clinical therapist in the Chronic Pain Clinic at Children's Health. Josh was a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, and we're here to find out about his very interesting story. Hi, Josh. Welcome to Mental Perk.
Thank you, everyone, for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about your road into the Marine Corps.
It was an interesting one. My dad was in the Marine Corps for 23 years. My mom was in the Marine Corps, believe it or not. Yeah.
Your mom was in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, if you met her, you would never ever believe that she was in the Marine Corps. One of my friends actually just found that out the other day and was like, "Your mom was in the Marines?" I was like, "Yeah." Things were a little bit different back, and that was in the 80s. So she got pregnant with me and got out, so she was only in for a couple of years. Long story short, I graduated high school, I think in like May or August of 2001, and we kind of know what happened in 2001. 9/11 happened. I was in the middle or just started my first semester at a local community college. And I'll be honest, I felt like college for me, at least at that time, was something that everyone was doing, and I felt as if I had to do, or it's like, what else are you going to do, you know? In my junior year of high school, I had talked with my dad about joining the Marine Corps, and then that kind of like went away when I think a majority of my friends were going to college. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then, very quickly, I wasn't motivated. I was disciplined, but in a different way, maybe not for academics. I was never a great student. I never studied. I got by. Very quickly into college, I found out that I was like, okay, this isn't for me. And then 9/11 happened, and I remember waking up one morning, and I think America Online was the thing back in 2000, and I remember signing on in that morning, and seeing the little news clip, and I didn't connect it to me. I thought it was, what if this happened type of thing. I didn't even read it. And I remember getting to campus, and then that's when I found out, because everyone else was talking about it, and I was like, oh crap. I wouldn't say it was an excuse, but I was like, okay, maybe that Marine Corps thing. And I knew college wasn't for me at that time, and I just wasn't motivated for it. And so I signed up, and I joined the Marine Corps, and I was gone in January 2002. So I was gone pretty quickly.
So they deployed you that quickly?
Not that quickly. Okay. I still had to go to 13 weeks of Marine Corps boot camp, and then you go to your occupational training. And it wasn't really until 2003 that I got first deployed, and that was on a Marine Expeditionary Unit it's a group of ships, and they're all over the globe, which is why the Marine Corps can go anywhere within like 6 hours, because they're just strategically put out there. And I was on one of those for a while, and then when I was in Japan. I was stationed in Japan at the time, and then I ended up coming back to California, which was lovely.
Yes, we love California.
Yeah, lived in San Diego, and then it was in 2004 that I went to my first deployment to Iraq.
Wow, that had to be an eye-opener.
It was exciting. I think the Marines have a unique way of molding young minds into thinking they are invincible. I think it's a young man's game. It's not, if you would have asked me if I would do that today, I would have a lot of apprehension and a lot of questions. I think, you feel, I think that's not just goes with the military, but I think young people in general feel like they're invincible.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And you're willing to do a lot more, take more risk than you would if you're older and you've got, a good job and a family and things of that nature. But so I ended up doing 2 tours in Iraq. I ended up getting out of the Marine Corps in October of 2006. So I did about 4.5 years.
How did those 4.5 years and the experiences that you have, how did that play into your own mental health?
It's really weird, and I think I don't want to say it's unique to veterans. I think when you're actively serving and in the military, you really don't think about your mental health whatsoever. You don't really, at least for me, I didn't really notice the toll or the effect that it had on me because you're around all those people constantly. That it's the norm. It's what you do. It's your job. It's what's expected of you. And then I don't think a lot of veterans even really notice until they finally get out and they're in the civilian world. And then all of that kind of like hits them like, okay, well, what now? What's my purpose? What do I do? Like, who am I looking after? What's my mission? And you've got that kind of high sense of anxiety or, alertness. And now you don't have to do that, but it's still there. So yeah, I think for me during it, I didn't really notice quite so much. Definitely changed after the first tour, though. I would say that. I used to be pretty I'm still introverted, but more introverted. Didn't go out to the clubs or hang, do things like that. Before my deployment, my friends were going to Vegas, and I stayed in the barracks, and I played video games most likely. Hey, I still do that now. Yeah, I didn't. But after the first tour, that changed quite a bit.
Do you feel like you were mentally prepared? Do you feel like the military prepared you for what you were getting yourself into?
Oh, absolutely. And as we were saying, I think the Marine Corps does a excellent job of doing that. Very prepared I think most people would think it, I don't want to say sick, but it's like we wanted it.
Sure.
Wanted it bad. I mean, it's something that, the Marine Corps just drills in your head. And I think that's why they make such great war fighters. Was I afraid? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But was I excited? Oh, yeah. I mean, it's most Marines, especially if you go into a job where it's a combat deployment. And most people that joined after 9/11 that went to a certain job, they knew kind of what they were signing up for. And so we were definitely prepared, 100% felt prepared, was excited, but also, scared at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, Josh and I, we worked together at Children's Health and, for several years. And, Josh is not one to much talk about himself or talk about his stories in the military. I mean, I knew he had seen some things and heard some things that were probably still weighing on him. I know you walked out with some even physical deficits.
Yeah. In 2004, my best friend was killed in Iraq by an IED, improvised explosive device. And I think most people would be pretty surprised to kind of see what kind of vehicles we were rolling around then. I like to call the early parts of the war, like 2004 to like 2006, were like the wild, wild west. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was very much, we had our Humvees, but they weren't armored up. So we had to like find scrap, and we were putting armor and welding, shields and things like that on our Humvees. So, I mean, that changed when I went back on my second. We actually had up armor Humvees, which, was awesome. Mm-hmm. But yes, I mean, it was very different. And so anyway, he was killed during our first tour. And then we had wounded, of course, a lot of wounded. And then I think total, at least during the time when I was in the tours I was on, we lost about 7. Not that many wounded, but 7 total at least killed in action for sure.
Now, after losing your mates, was it hard for you to focus on getting back out into the field after knowing you just lost your best friend? I mean, how did you stay focused on the mission? It's
a unique situation where, so just to give you guys a little background about what I did over there, we had 2 teams, so we just alternated days, and then on our off days, because there's no, we would do patrols. So on our patrol days, we would patrol, from like 5 in the afternoon till about 8 in the morning. And we would patrol up and down the roads. And then when it got dark, we would go off the roads. We turn on our night vision, and we kind of just wait for someone to like try to plant a roadside bomb or anything like that. On our on days, that we would work like 2 on, 2 off, something like that. We would provide security for EOD, which is explosive ordnance disposal. And so we were on call 24/7. So anytime, we not we, but we would receive a call from an Army unit, a Marine Corps unit, or whatever unit was out there. And they would, another truck got hit with an IED. Was there a car IED? Was there suspected IED? They would call us out there, and we would have to figure out, whether it be a post-blast analysis, like what was it, try to figure that out, or try to send a robot up there and disarm it. And if that didn't work, which the robots were they get blown up half the time. And then, we would have to, send an EOD tech up there. And so our job was to provide security for them. And so there would be a total of 5 trucks, one in the middle, the EOD truck in the middle, and we would escort them out there and, provide perimeter and security for them. And so that's kind of what we did. It was pretty crazy job.
Yeah, it sounds like a crazy job. And I can imagine that you still have thoughts about it or...
Oh yeah, I mean it's a weird thing that, I joined when I was I 18? No, 19. I think I was 19. Joined when I was 19, and got out when I was 24, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So young. I mean, we don't even think about how young.
Yeah.
But you imagine how much you grew up in those 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at pictures between before first deployment and like it's like.
Shaving, no shaving.
Yeah.
Shaving, no shaving.
You can see the age,
Yeah.
on people's faces, which is pretty incredible.
Well, we were kind of talking about, I'm sure that you are still have thoughts or feelings about things that happened back then.
Yeah, what I was getting at was it seems as it's been so long. I'm 40 now. I mean, it seems forever ago, and parts of me seems like it never even happened because it seems like a completely different life. But I also think that's been something that's helped me is that I've been able to find a different career path and find a different goal and do something. And I think that's why it feels that way. But yes, I mean, even though I have all these other things going on, I mean, it's definitely something that I'll never forget, there's probably not a day that goes by that I don't think about it. Some days are easy. Some days are harder. Especially around those anniversaries or those times where, like, I know that a friend passed away or things like that, or, I think those days can be harder. But I'm thankful for, everything that I have now. Definitely it makes it easier. But yes, I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't think about it.
I think when you serve in the military, especially like the Marine Corps, you have a different appreciation for life and the things around you and the freedoms that we have here.
Yes.
Maybe more so than people who don't have that experience.
Well, and I think also, too, you truly have an understanding of brotherhood.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I got your back.
Yes.
When you hear one of your brothers say, I've got your back, those boys have your back. And it's not just while you're active.
Oh, yeah.
It's throughout life.
Yeah.
100%.
Yes, and I'm still... you fall. I think it's natural that you fall out of touch with some people, but there is at least a good 3 or 4 that I served with that we still talk weekly.
Yes.
I see them at least 2 times a year. I mean, so yeah.
Now, when you reconnect with these guys, I mean, do y'all ever go through down that road of like, hey, dude, I'm struggling. Like, I really kind of need to talk. Whether it's around a time of year where y'all lost one of your comrades, do you talk about it or?
Yes and no. I think me being a counselor, that definitely has helped me quite a bit. In a way, forced me to get to my emotional side and be willing to talk about those things, especially if I'm going to want my clients to talk about those things. I better, and I think I'm really good at that. I would say that most of my friends are they really struggle in that department quite a bit. There'll be times and I would say once or twice that I can think of that, one of those anniversaries will come around and they'll mention, hey, like so-and-so passed away to, just kind of give a reminder and, how are you doing? Good. But it's always, I'm doing good. It's very surface level. It's almost never, even if you directly ask them, which I will tend to sometimes be pretty blunt. I see X, Y, and Z, like, are you okay? It's always like, they're okay. And I think that's, could be I don't want to say it's a guy thing, but it could be.
Well, And we're going to get into some of these statistics around veterans and mental health, but I just think it's so interesting that you leave the Marine Corps, you've had these traumatic experiences, and you chose counseling as your path.
Yeah,
especially for a guy who doesn't like college, right? So this is very rigorous study going on here.
Yeah, I felt once I got out, it was, okay, now what? But I felt after 2 tours, and I mean, they were pretty dangerous, and I was like, okay, I think I'm rolling, I'm gonna get a bad roll of the dice eventually if I keep, going back. So I got out, and I was like, I'm gonna go to college. So I moved back home with my dad, and I started at the local community college. And I think, back in 2001, I wasn't ready for school, but after everything, I was like, I can do this now. And like I said, not that I wasn't disciplined before, because my dad was a former Marine, but I was definitely ready. It was like, okay, now almost like the pressure was on. I'm 24. I need to do something. Yeah. And so I think it was that outlook that I had.
Why counseling? Why'd you pick counseling of all things?
I feel like counseling picked me almost. Wow. Yeah, if you would have asked me back then, would I be where I am now? I'd be like, no. Working with kids, working with kids, period. And then to be a counselor, not at all, because I was never a good student. So I just thought I never thought I wasn't smart enough, but I definitely, as I said earlier, I didn't apply myself. So, after college, I did. My undergrad was in applied behavior analysis, and so the plan was to go to graduate school then afterwards, after my undergrad, and get my BCBA. And so I was working towards that, at least getting my BCBA, my Assistant Board Certified Behavior Analyst. And so I was working with this agency, working with a family, working with kids that way. And then I don't really know what happened with that. It just wasn't a good fit. And then my friend that I was doing jiu-jitsu with at the time was working at this after-school program in Denton. And he's like, I needed a job. And I was like, okay. So, we'd help with their homework. We'd take them out to play tetherball and kickball and things like that. And so I did that. And so it's really weird. Someone that was, never really interested in working with kids, continued to find their way working with kids, They
just kept crossing your path.
Exactly. And then after I graduated, I got a job at Children's. And so, working in the inpatient and, psychiatric unit, and getting to see all different kinds of roles, psychiatrists, psychologists, clinical therapists, nurses. And then I was just like, I think I might want to do, therapists. Let me try that. And that's kind of how it started.
Kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
So did you ever think that you might work with veterans, or do you feel like that's too much for you, that this is a better lane for you?
No, I mean, it's definitely crossed my mind. It's just that opportunity hasn't really presented itself. And I think that I've really found myself to really enjoy doing what I do in the population that I do. I do think that veterans can benefit from having someone that I think that they would perceive as understanding them better. Yeah. But I think that is a huge barrier that has to be eradicated, at least, in their mind.
How do you think that is something, I know, loaded question. Yeah. But how do you think that's something that you guys, or that it can be changed to where they're transitioned into that more?
Yes, definitely. I think when you have such a unique experience such as, combat, it's, if you feel that someone else hasn't been through that, that they can't, there's no way that they can understand what they're going through, what they've seen. And I think as, therapists, we know that, definitely no one ever is going to be able to experience the same exact thing as you. Yeah. And so but we all experience those emotions. We've all been scared. We've all been terrified. We've all been sad, depressed, or anxious, which are all those feelings that you experience, in that unique situation. And even if we went through the same experience, it doesn't mean that we're all going to have the same experience, right?
Right. You're going to feel it differently. You're going to remember it differently.
Exactly. I might think it's awesome. It could be as easy as like an analogy that I throw around when I work with kids, they're like, you didn't get it. I was like, okay, well, or their parent, they feel like their parents don't get it.
Right.
you know, it's like, well, let's pretend we get on a roller coaster. Do you like roller coasters? Yes. I was like, well, I hate them, and I don't care for them. That's true.
Who does,
yeah.
right?
I don't either.
Okay, good. We're all on the same page. But, you know, we could finish the roller coaster, and I might be about to throw up, sick, you know, this was terrible. And you're like, oh, let's do it again. Yeah. Same roller coaster. We sat next to each other. We had two different experiences, you know.
Exactly.
Great analogy.
Yeah, I love that one.
I was thinking roller coaster before you said that. So
Really?
I'm so glad you said it. But yes, you know, and I think, you know, as we talk about the mental health field, we know that we are short on counselors. There's not enough counselors. I think there's like one counselor for every like 345 or 54 people, right? So we know we don't have enough counselors nationwide. And I'm sure in the world of veterans, that's even harder to come by. I know resources aren't always easily available to them. Actually, we know from the Department of Veteran Affairs that there's an increase 90% are needing mental health care out of veterans. And so we don't have enough counselors to help all of them. So what is your experience with that? What do you feel like some of like your friends or people that you were in service with or people that you're hearing about now, how likely are they to get care if they need it?
At least in my experience, not likely, or they've tried it out for a very short period of time and they just felt as if it didn't work for them.
Is it because you think that they're not going deep enough or they're not connecting because experiences aren't the same? Or, you know, I know a lot of veterans that feel like the system's kind of broken and failed them. So, I mean, what do you think it is? I mean, do you think they're hesitant because they know that systems will need some fixing? I mean, what do you think?
I think part of it is, you know, at least when I got out back in 2006, I mean, I will say, not that I've been back to the VA as far as for like mental health, you know, for therapy or anything like that since then for that specifically, but things are a lot different now. And I will give them credit as far as I think they've worked really hard and have tried the best that they can. But I think the need is out. I mean, just like in the community in general, there's so much need and not enough resources.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that, you know, the VA uses CBT, they use processing, you know, kind of like exposure therapy,
right.
EMDR, and those are great. I mean, I know that we use them, you know, where I work, but I just feel...
So let me stop you, though.
Yeah.
For the lay person that doesn't know what those mean, can you explain to me, to the person out there that doesn't know what you just said? Yeah,
so they use, you know, cognitive processing therapy. It's a form of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So, you know, you're learning skills to manage your PTSD, which teaches you how to change your negative thoughts about your trauma, which can have a big impact, obviously, on your mood and how you feel. And so that's one of the main ones that they use. They also will have, you know, like spouses join, which I think is fantastic.
I think so too, yeah.
Because, I mean, you're living with that veteran. I can't imagine... You know what that's like.
And I don't know that we consider the trauma that the wives of and husbands of veterans also feel knowing their loved ones across in some kind of situation that could be unbearable, right?
Exactly.
So, and the thought of just, you know, not knowing is just really difficult for them too. And I'm sure that the mental health there is also a challenge.
I can tell you personal experience, 13 years of it, 9-month deployments at a time. There's that lost connection. They come back and you have to relearn things again.
Yeah.
And not knowing what they exactly dealt with is hard.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine the readjustment, and it takes a village.
It does.
It takes a team, and the wives, I think that's the one thing, the wives really have to be that support system for their husbands.
Yeah.
They really do.
I think it takes at least, you know, when I first got out and I was seeing a therapist, she said, it's going to take a very special person in order to... And I think it does.
I truly believe that, Josh. It takes a very special person for you.
Exactly. But yeah, the exposure therapy, so that helps them, you know, confront situations and memories, you know, that they've avoided, you know, since the trauma. EMDR, which I know that we've all heard about, but the eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So thinking about images and feelings that distress you while doing, rapid eye movements. And
that's a big player when it comes to PTSD,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So that's for trauma and PTSD. Yeah. It's a therapy that's been researched to prove effective.
Yeah, definitely. And so they're very into evidence based.
Mm-hmm.
I think evidence-based is great. I mean, we know that it's effective. We know that it works. However, I would imagine with such a big need, and I'm making an assumption here, but you lose that, I think, that personal piece that I think, which makes counseling so special and so different in a lot of ways, is that, I love that person-centered, approach. And I think that can get lost, especially when it's like, it's almost as if, get them in, get them out. You have 3 to 4 months, You
must hit this many skills. You need to have this much improvement.
Exactly.
It's measured in percentages. And so it kind of takes out that personalization.
Yeah, and so some of my friends that have done therapy, that's all they think it is.
Yeah.
Learning coping skills, doing, and it's I'm like, there's so much more to that, that I feel like you're missing. And I almost want them to, no offense to the VA, but go see a civilian counselor. But then you've got those other barriers, like, well, they're not going to get me. I'm like.
And, but what you're talking about is really about empathy and validation. And those are two things that every human being needs. And I think that that's where veterans are feeling they're not getting that. They're not getting that empathy and validation that they really need for healing.
Yes.
Yeah, and if we kind of going back to even the statistics, if we look, 11 to 20% of veterans leave with PTSD, or they develop it later after they've discharged. And we also know about 20% they have maybe, I would say more. I would probably say more struggling with some sort of major depressive disorder.
Yeah, I would say, the 3 barriers that, on the Veterans Affairs website is, perceptual barriers. So lack of perceived need. And this goes for, I think, not just veterans, but non-veterans. I mean, I think we all tend to underestimate how bad we're struggling. And veterans, of course, and I think that has a lot to do with the military culture and the way they're indoctrinated. You don't talk about your feelings. You're this, and that. You don't talk about when you're hurting or, you don't feel good. You just kind of push through. And I think, that's great for a certain amount of time, but,
It almost makes me think of when you guys are in the field and things are going chaotic around you. You're losing your comrades, and then all of a sudden you come back and you're like, if I could get through that,
yes,
I don't even need to talk about this.
Yeah,
is that kind of the mentality you think?
Definitely. You've got to compartmentalize, at the time, this is my goal. I got to take that and put that somewhere else for right now, because I've got to make sure that I still have this mission. I still have this to do. It's when that mission is done, then, it's going to come somewhere.
And that compartmentalizing is something that is a CBT skill as well. So, it's kind of funny that you're doing it in the field, and then you're also learning that in therapy.
But a lot of veterans will drop out of treatment because they think, the lack of perceived need, they don't need it, or this isn't working. Low mental health literacy and just the lack of awareness of their own emotions in general.
And, trauma is a funny beast, because you may not have trauma, or when you have a traumatic situation, you may not have the effects of it for years down the road, right? It's not always something that's immediate.
Yes.
It could hit you 5 or 10 years down the road, and you don't even know it hit you. So it's a very strange thing, because a lot of these veterans are like, oh, I'm fine. And then boom, it hits them years down the road.
Yep. Yes.
And they don't know how to deal with it.
And I see a lot of friends, I've had a couple buddies who have recently retired. One that retired within the last year that I served in Iraq with, 2 tours in Iraq with, and another one who retired probably in 2018, 2019, that I served 2 tours in Iraq with. And it's, for a lot of them, it isn't until they know they're about to retire and things. And obviously, with most jobs, the longer that you've been in it, I won't say the cushier it gets, but you know what I mean? You're not going on deployments, that's exactly. It's a younger person's thing, being thrusted in that role. And so when they get out, it's, and one that I'm really, really close with, and I could see it. Like I knew it in just, they're not wanting to talk about it. And eventually they did, which is great. But I think it's not until, at least for some, it's not until it's, it's not just, okay, I got out. It's now what am I going to do to make money? I've got a family. I mean, it's a whole another, just a lot of other stressors and issues and worries on top of all of that, which exacerbates all of those other things.
Yeah, and that brings me, because Brandy and I work with Hannah for Hope Foundation, and Hannah for Hope focuses on suicide prevention. And what we know right now is suicide is the second leading cause of death for veterans under the age of 45. That's a really high number. We also know that 22 veterans die by suicide every day.
Yeah.
That's too many. These are people that fought for our country, and we've got to do something to help them. We've got to find a way to make sure that veterans are connected to mental health care.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a passion, about all of us is, how do we make sure that they're not lost in the dust? How do we make sure that we're bringing this issue, to the surface and really getting them help?
And I would even emphasize it's more than just on Memorial Day or Veterans Day. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I think that's when everybody comes together, but this is a daily struggle for you guys.
Definitely.
And it's something we absolutely need to do more with, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope that, at Mendel Park here, we can start to raise awareness about that and bring that to the forefront. I also know that there's like a high percentage of substance use. Can you tell me a little bit about that, or abuse, or,
Yeah, definitely, and not just with the Marine Corps. I can speak to the Marine Corps in general, but I mean, we definitely like to drink, and, I think a lot of veterans will use that as a way to cope. And
That's
to
what I was wondering.
mask their feelings. And you are absolutely right. I have, close personal friends who have, even non-veterans that have battled, alcoholism, or whether it be or both substance abuse as well. Yeah. I've had friends that have been sober for 2-3 years. I've had friends that have relapsed. But yes, it is definitely not for all. But I've, definitely, at least personally for me, I know that I have several close friends that have struggled with substance abuse of some sort and continue to do so. Being a therapist, I mean, I can see what it is. It's a coping mechanism. It's a way to cope. It's a way to relax and kind of numb themselves to some way.
Does the military provide any training or education around how easy it is to slip into a substance use disorder?
I can only speak. I mean, like I said, I got out in 2006. I would hope that it's a lot better now. I know that they're a lot more they're improved in a lot of ways. I just can't speak to what it is now, but then not really. I mean, every weekend we would get like a safety brief, like, hey, don't drink too much, practice moderation, don't be on the news,
Don't be
Kind of like the billboards on the street that says "Don't drink and drive and buckle up."
Exactly.
Kind of
Very, very brief, very superficial. When I got out, there wasn't a whole lot of encouragement to go get help, or in the VA system, wasn't prepared, and they're not as well equipped as they are now, even though they're still not as equipped as they really should be. But I think a lot of that is out of their control. Yeah, it is a problem. But at least when I was in, not a whole lot of education for sure on that. Not any that most people would pay attention to, I guess.
Yeah, because they're just trying to do what it takes to get by in those moments.
Yes.
Yeah, and to try not to have to feel the feelings they're probably feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Josh? There's something that you do every year, and I want you to tell us about it. It's a really cool thing. And is it on Veterans Day or Memorial Day where you do? Because you're like a big cross train. Yeah. What is it? Where you put on all the weight and you do?
So I do CrossFit, and CrossFit does this thing every Memorial Day called Murph, and it is. I mean, I know that you've known me when I've done it. I'm a little bit older. My body's a little bit beat up. I can't do it like I used to, but it's so Michael Murphy was a Navy SEAL who was, if you guys have ever seen the movie Lone Survivor, it's named after him, awarded the Medal of Honor. Long story short, CrossFit has a workout called Murph, and it's one of the workouts that he liked to do. And so you put on a 20-pound vest, you run a mile, you do, what is it? I think it's 300. 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, and then you run another mile.
Is that with band assistance on the pull-ups?
You can.
Okay.
Definitely there are
Just making sure.
scaling options for everybody. You definitely do not have to wear a vest. People do without the vest. People do half of it. It's, CrossFit does it in a way just to kind of honor, the veterans, and they do it on Memorial Day, of course. But yes, that is a workout.
Well, I love that. No, every time you used to do that, I would be so impressed. And it just made me think, wow, you just have such strong character anyway. And the work that you do at Children's, I know you're using all of your skills and talents to really help children. And you're now in the pain clinic, which I'm sure those kids have a lot of trauma as well, dealing with their physical pain that they're going through. So I know you have a connection there with them. Anything that you want to share or anything that's kind of close to your heart on when it comes to veterans and mental health, or that you would want people to know or be able to connect to?
Yeah, so I've been a part of this organization for about 3 years. It's called Operation Pay It Forward. I think we've all heard of the Pay It Forward. Someone does something nice for you, and they're like, you need to pay it forward. You need to do something nice for them. So I got involved with it in 2020. A veteran, a friend of mine who was part of this organization already, took me out on a mule deer hunt in Utah. I took a buddy out on a mountain lion hunt, and I think it was 2021. But that's kind of the goal. And so, there's a lot of nonprofits out there for veterans, but I think most of us know with most nonprofits, there's such a small percentage of the actual dollar that's going towards whatever the cause is, whatever, they're supporting. Operation Pay It Forward has zero, on their board, there's zero paid positions. And so, 100% of their proceeds go to the veterans. And every year we have a really big fundraiser in Utah. And I just came back from one like 2 weeks ago. So it's like completely funded by just like the generosity of, people wanting to make donations. And I have their mission statement. I can read it for you guys.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yes.
I would love for you to. And there are many organizations out there that are actually helping veterans, and we really want to draw attention to those as you're looking for the motto. I just wanted to, bring a few of those forward. I know there's like Tunnels for Towers. There's Wounded Warrior.
There's Carry the Load.
Carry the Load. And Carry the Load.
Carry On.
Yes. There's a bunch of them out there, but this, Pay It Forward. And if you're out there and you're listening and you really have a heart for veterans and you really want to, help, with the mental health crisis that's facing veterans, please reach out to some of these organizations and see how you can help.
Yeah, it's their website specifically is OPIF, the number 4, ourvets.org. And so their mission statement is, our mission is to show our appreciation for our fighting veterans by connecting them with others that share the same passions and are willing to get them into the outdoors and enjoying life again. So I know this is not part of their mission statement, but it's like recreational therapy in a way.
Yeah.
We challenge all of our veterans that participate in the Pay It Forward by spreading the word to their brothers and sisters that need help or could use some time in the outdoors to refocus their minds on the important things in life. Operation Pay It Forward was founded and organized by veterans that understand the healing process and by providing a new focus and mission for these veterans. One of the biggest voids is from the lack of camaraderie and brotherhood that has kept them alive in combat situations. And in civilian life, this is most easily duplicated by spending time in the field, hunting, fishing, or simply enjoying the outdoors. Our goal is to provide a new focus for our returning veterans and provide them with a new mission to help save their brothers and sisters they served with. The enemy in civilian life is often within the veteran and much more difficult to identify and fight. And we are here to help the battle. And it doesn't always have to be a big hunting event or anything.
Right.
Take a veteran to go golfing, to dinner, to lunch. It's just about doing those little things. And OPIF pays 100% of all of those things.
And I love that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's huge.
Yeah, getting them out and just doing things and feeling normal and connecting with people,
Yeah.
that has to be so therapeutic.
It is. It's awesome.
That is so amazing. And, Josh, we can't thank you enough for your service and the
Yes.
sacrifices that you made for our country, and just the work that you're doing now with children and families and really focusing on mental health and helping people through that. That's just absolutely amazing. We always want to remind you, our listeners, that if you are out there and you're struggling with mental health issues, please reach out to somebody. There's therapists, there's counselors, there's psychiatrists. They're all out there. And even if you're not able to locate a professional, please talk to a trusted friend or a relative to let them know you're struggling so that we can get you connected to some therapy. We know that when you're dealing with mental health crisis, that it is treatable. There's things that we can do, and there's things that, there's all kinds of treatments that can help you. You don't have to suffer through this alone. If you are struggling with self-harm or suicidal thoughts, we want you to go to the nearest ER, call 911, or reach out to the National Suicide Hotline at 988. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Mental Perk. We hope our talk today highlighted real people working through real issues based on mental health. Our goal at Mental Perk is to make sure that everybody knows you matter. You're never alone.